Yeah, we can continue.
Okay, so now we're going to take a look at role-based access, which is one of the strengths of using Ansible Tower. With role-based access, everyone has to be part of an AD group. And being part of the AD group now, we further put people either as admins, there's developers, there are QA leads, and there are environment managers. So the developers, QA leads, and environment managers, these are roles in Ansible Tower itself. So when you look out to the left, you see here where it's got organization, and you see project A, project B, project C. You can, because of role-based access, we can determine which group can see which project, because you don't want someone over in another area having access to something that they shouldn't be touching. So even the developers, because of role-based access, we can, they can do development, but they can't touch the prod servers, for instance. You don't want someone who's in QA to be doing prod deployment, or maybe they are able to. So with the role-based access, we can say you can have access to the project and the inventory and the job template, or just the project and the inventory. But that's set up via the AD group. So depending on which AD group you belong to, not everyone will see the same thing. So I think if you log into Tower, you may not see anything until you're actually put as a member of a certain AD group. And then you're added to the organization itself. So this is what the design looks like. So this is Devon QA, the org, Platform X, for instance, projects, credentials, in inventories, and job templates. And then you have the prod environment. Organization groups related to projects based on platforms such as channel services, EBS, wealth product, etc. So when you log into Tower, if you go into organization, you may only see one project. You may see 3. It depends on if you've been added to that project itself. There's a prod version of each organization. So whatever we have in Dev QA, you'll have in prod also. The admins are assigned to each organization based on their STO approval. So not everyone is going to be an admin. Because if you're an admin, you're allowed to create projects. You can create and manage the org AD groups. You can manage the job templates and the inventories. You manage the teams and permissions. And you manage credential for target host. So as I said, not everyone needs to have these rights. So only the SPO will approve who belongs to the admin group. The tower administrators, they create the orgs. They map the AD groups to each team, and they provide technical assistance. For auto deployments, project inventories, and job templates, there's a naming standard that has to be followed, and I'll show you the naming standard that we do use. So the design of RBAC is to manage user access to inventories or environment, because as we said, you don't want someone that's in the dev environment to be touching the prod environment. And users are members of one or more teams. The teams are assigned permission based on the admin of the organization or the group. Some users are organization administrators. Those are the ones that the STO will have approved. and they manage all the assets of the organization. So like I said, they're the ones who are going to determine who belongs to which role or permission. The access is based on AD group membership. So it's very important to know that when you're logging into Tower, you're using your Office credentials. And we go back and we say access is based on AD group memberships. AD group for the org administrators, and there's an AD group for each org team. So if you want to see the RBAC design, it's on Confluence. Is this page here. And I believe this is one that you saw earlier. So here's the organization. You have the inventories. You have teams, credentials, permissions to users, projects, and jobs. And this tells you who can do essentially what. And this is the group, the AD group that you have to belong to. So development admin, it's got to be role dash Ansible dash the organization name dash admin. And for developers, it's org name dash developers. And that's done before it even gets up to prod. That's being done when we onboard, when we do an onboarding. That's when this is all set up. So by the time it gets to prod, they don't have this type of work to do. And these are all the different roles that we have. So development admin, a development user, the QA user, environment management user, the ops user, and this tells you what they're allowed to do. So based on your role, it tells you what you're going to be allowed to do. So based on your role, you have to belong to a particular AD group, and then that gives you the right to do certain things. And if you need access to that, I can also give, I can give that to you. Just bear with me a second. DevOps tools integration. So there are other tools that we're using that ties into Tower. So we're not just using Tower by itself. We use Bamboo and other continuous integration tools. The Ansible Tower REST API, it provides the capability that triggers the automated deployment. So when they set up once we've configured Ansible Tower, then they also do a creation for Bamboo. And when they set up Bamboo correctly, it will trigger the automated deployment via the REST API. The automation scripts provide zero manual deployment capabilities with or without sign-offs. Bitbucket. Bitbucket, it integrates directly to access the Ansible directory and files for deployment using Git command. But what we do in Ansible Tower, once you set up the project, you point it to the Bitbucket repo. You have to have specific credentials to be able to access that repo. So again, it's not just anyone who can access a repo. You have to have the credentials to be able to access that specific repo in Bitbucket. And for Bitbucket, you also use your Office account and password to get in. The same for Bamboo. So everything you're using your AD account. And Bitbucket is configured in the project in Ansible Tower, which I'll show you how it's all set up. And this is how they do the integration for Bamboo. So they create a plan. They go and they create a new project. They're going to configure their first task, which is the source code checkout. So they do. So from dev, this is where this development is being done. They configured their second task, which is the script. And here, this is where they're passing the arguments. So everything that you fill in here, this piece here, and this script that's being done, this is what's being passed into, Ansible Tower, and it will trigger the job template, and it will pass this information directly into Ansible Tower, the job template. So this is where it's triggered from in Bamboo. And in Bamboo, I don't think you can see I don't think you're able to access the plans unless you've been given specific authorization to do that. So the target host requirements and connections. So Ansible, we use Ansible to go to Linux and Windows servers. But there's some certain requirements that are necessary. For a Linux machine, you have to have Python 2.4 or above, not 3. If it's less than 2.5, you have to install Python simple JSON. You have to have Centrify for service account access. It uses the AD group. And it uses the role-ansible _auto deploy _dev. And it's Office, which is linked to the Office/SA _auto deploy _dev. And same for QA here. You have to have Open SSH for SFTP or SCP. And you have to install libse linux-python if SE Linux is enabled. And you have to set the appropriate access as required for the system administrator. So there's a guide to set up for system administrator for Centrify. And it's this one. So all these links that we have, you can get access to them so you can take a look at it. But these are the auto deploy requirements for Linux systems. For Windows, the requirements for Windows, it has to have PowerShell 3.0 and WinRM. So Linux, you're using SSH, but Windows, we're using WinRM. And it has to be configured on the target. Ansible, they do provide a script to configure WinRM. It uses Kerberos to authenticate on the target. And Kerberos on the Ansible server has to be configured for all domains to be accessed. And a principal user is used to connect to the target. So that's the system administrator. For non-Office trusted domains like LabOffice, we have to switch the principal user. And NTLM support for that is coming. If it's Windows Server 2008 with Management Framework 3.0, this fix has to be applied to avoid memory errors. And the system administrator should have admin rights on the target host. And again, WinRM must be configured for use with Ansible, and the PowerShell script has been provided to configure WinRM. Connection variables. So machine credentials in Ansible Tower are used for SSH and WinRM connections. SSH is the default using port 22. For Windows, now these variables, you set these variables at the inventory level. And again, I'll show you where that's done. Or you can even do them in the group bars. So it uses the connection, WinRM, and the port it uses is 5985. For privilege escalation, this applies to Linux only. The placer task can become another user once you're connected. So this is a play that we want to do, which is to start Apache. This is the module service, name equal to Apache. The state started, so this is how you tell it we want to start the Apache service. If we wanted to stop it, it would be state equals stop. Become true, so this is going to default to the root user. So same one here, but we have a little bit more. So become true, but then here we say become user HTTP_admin. And become method is SU. And become password. The password, this is how we pass a variable in. Remember from before when we said you do the colon, the double brace, and this would be in a vault. So this would be passed from a vault, the vault file in Ansible, directly into here. They become variables can be set in the inventory, and these override the ones that are defined in playbooks. So you can put in your playbook become, but if you put it in your inventory, it will override the ones in the playbook. And so it's Ansible_become, the method, become the user, and become password. And this is what you do when you want privilege escalation. We're now at standards. So in Tower, the naming standards are based on the application's AppCat information, which is the application catalog number that's being given to it. And this will allow us to gather metrics on automation deployments by application for reporting purposes. So for example, the org is channel services. The project would be CIPG_1234. So this would be the AppCat short name, and this is the AppCat ID. The inventory would be the AppCat short name and the environment. So we have the deployment support workflow. So if there's a deployment and there's a failure, you view the deployment log in Ansible. If there's an application deployment error, if it's no, is there an enhancement required? Then if it's yes, there's an enhancement required, we go down to the feature enhancement backlog, which is assigned the next business day. tickets closed. But if you get here and it's no, then we have to investigate the application deployment error. And these are the managers for those teams. So for PNC Canada, Diane Jackson. For channels, it's Brock Elliott. For Wealth, Errol Martin. And for corporate, it's Charles Chung. If it's resolved, yes, no, then we go down, engage in incident resolution. The manager would be Jamil Mina. Ansible, if it's an Ansible issue, it's Russell Goff. If it's an Artifactory issue, it's Cynthia. And if it's OpenShift, it's Lenora. Resolution, the ticket gets closed. If here there is, if we're here and there's no resolution, yes, again, ticket's closed. If the application deployment error, yes, then we have to check to see if it's the OS or the middleware error. You get the system admin, they remediate the application and or server issues. This is the number to call, and you can restart the auto deployment. If it's resolved, we can close the ticket. If not, then this is when it goes back down to investigate the application deployment error. If it's not the OS or middleware, then it has to be escalated to the developer. And they check if it's a shared role issue, and again, it goes down to be investigated. So this is the support flow when there's an application deployment and we're not sure what's causing the problem. In many instances, it could just be something that you can restart. If it's not, then it's pushed down to the proper channels. So again, this will be shared with your team. This is the management guide for DevOps, the environment management guide. It shows about configuring Bamboo for auto deployment. We went through this slide before. How to trigger auto deploy to Ansible Tower. But this is all done by the developers. Restarting a deployment from Ansible. So remember I've spoken before, here's the project, inventories, job templates, and jobs. So those are, when you log into Ansible Tower, these are the 4 menu choices that you'll see. You'll likely see the graph like this. And these are the choices you'll see. If you need to restart a job, you click on jobs. You go in and you click to start, to restart it, so it will be failed. You restart it, and it will just trigger the job to restart. To manage inventories, you click on inventories. You go in. This is where you create inventories, your inventories. Inventory with the AppCat ID and the environment. So that's what it actually looks like in Ansible. And this is for when you want to troubleshoot a deployment. So when you see it's failed, you can click on here, or you can click on the server name, and you can actually, so you click on the host name and it gets down here, you click on results, and here's the message. So this is the standard out. It will tell you what happened. And this is the error that you will see. Sometimes it's very straightforward and other times it's not. This is the standards and development guide that we have on Confluence. Organizations, form name, /prod, team names. This is how they're supposed to be set up. So for instance, you have channel services _ MDC _ developers. Permissions, and this is used to assign permissions to Ansible our teams. This is how you set up your inventories. AppCat short name, AppCat number, and the environment. And when you're setting up the job template, it's set up exactly like this. And project, so for everything that we do, there's a standards guide that we have to go about using to set up everything because we want consistency across the board. And for the AD group naming standards, it has to be set up like this. Role-Ansible -org name -admin, org name team, org name project name. And this is when we want to onboard a new project or app deployment in Ansible Tower. So this site it's a standard for developers to use. Okay, does anyone have any questions? I'm going to do a short demo of Ansible Tower, but does anyone have any questions? Here's Tower. As I said, you log in with your ID and password. As you can see, projects, inventories, job templates, jobs. Organizations are set up like this. So my ID only has rights to see these organizations. That's why I only see these. And you may only see one or two. It depends on which org that you are admitted to. You can set up the credentials. And again, it depends on what you are assigned to see. The org admins, they're the ones who set up the team. And they determine who is a member of what team. Now, for a project, this is one that I've been working with. So this is how a project is set up. So first we get the organization created. Then they have to set up the project. In this case, the project is in Bitbucket. So this is the location in Bitbucket where this project grabs the information from. So this is where all the source code is located in Bitbucket itself. And this would be the credential that they would use. And they're using the SCM branch in Bitbucket development. The SCM type is Git. And they've set it to update on launch. So what that means is every time that the job template is launched, it checks to see if there's an update on the playbook. And they go from there. at this time. The developer is going to request a deployment. He does it to Bamboo. Via Bamboo, Bamboo will retrieve the source code from Bitbucket. It initiates the build in Maven, and it stores the artifacts. The artifacts are the files to be deployed, and those are stored in Artifactory. So when the developer requests the deployment, so you have all these things going on at the same time. Bamboo then will initiate the deployment to Ansible, and it's done via the API call to Ansible. Ansible will go out and it retrieves the build files from Artifactory, and then it will do a deployment and configuration to the particular environment that we want to go to. So, for instance, it goes to the dev servers. Then you have to do a sign off once everything is okay in dev. And once you get the sign off, then it's deployed to QA. And once you sign off in QA, then it goes to prod. So you don't have whereby before we had so many hands touching it before it could be implemented. Now we're reducing the steps that was there before. Any questions? Am I speaking too fast, by the way?
No.
Hello? No, okay. So here's the current state that we have. So the dev team would build the binary. The dev team would upload the binary and make it available to the deployment team. The dev team would create the build guide. It would then raise the ticket, do an email or a phone call to request a deployment. The deployment team, they would review the deployment letter and ask for any kind of clarification that they need. The receiver, once they're satisfied with it, they would sign off on the request. And then the deployment team, they would deploy the application and inform the dev the application is being deployed. So you had like a 7-step process that was in place. So you see here the dev team, their piece would be all the way up to here. And then the DevOps team would take over from here, and then you have the QA and the ops team here, and the DevOps team would be involved here. But where we're hitting is that the development team, they would initiate the automated build. The continuous integration / continuous deployment tool would initiate the deployment. This is the Bamboo piece would be here. All right, so this is the Bamboo piece here. So the developers, they would request a deployment. The Bamboo piece would take over, and it initiates the deployment. The receiver would sign off on the deployment. So once it's deployed to QA, dev, they sign off on it. It goes to QA. It's signed off in QA, and then it would move on to prod. And then the automation deploys, and all stakeholders are informed. So you're really eliminating multiple steps from the process by moving to the DevOps framework. So the framework that we have, this is the Ansible onboarding framework. All right. Currently, the Ansible Tower runtime. So you have a non-prod servers, and you had the prod servers, the org administrator. In this case, in the non-prod, you have a dev automation master. You have the DevOps ARA team, which is our team. You have the DevOps environment management, and you have the ops team. They would have access to this piece, and then there would be the API ID, which would be a non-prod service account. But when you move over into the production environment, it's just the DevOps environment management and the ops team. The dev team, they're able to view the inventory and deployment logs, but nothing else. And the API ID to run the jobs would be the prod service account. In Bitbucket, the master branch, the runtime playbook would be stored here, and then it would be used in the deployment for the project. In the development branch, goes to both the dev and QA. But there'll be no modification once the playbook is signed off on. There is no modification done to it. So once you're satisfied that this thing works in dev and QA, there is no modification made to the playbook. And I'll get into what a playbook is afterwards. So here's the automation workflow. The developer does a git push. Bitbucket is where the source code is stored. And in Ansible Tower, there's a project, we create a project in Ansible Tower that ties into Bitbucket. It's the connection from Ansible Tower to Bitbucket. And in Bitbucket, it's stored, those are where your playbooks are stored. The playbooks are in the YAML format. It contains all your variables, your host variables, all the information that you need. When it does a git push, it also does a git pull. So the project is the one that ties in the Ansible Tower with Bitbucket. But the job template is what does the initiation. So you have the continuous integration tool. In this case, like I said, is Bamboo with the API call. And what the job template does, it pulls the project and the credentials with the inventories. The inventories will be all the hosts, all the servers that you're going to be targeting. And the variables are there so that whatever you need deployed to this particular environment, the variables are defined for this environment itself. The job template will initiate a job, and the job pushes it out to whichever environment is targeted in your variable. And when the job runs, it also does a pull from Artifactory and pulls down all the binaries. And so right now, the state is that you would copy files, the development team would upload these files, the binaries, to a location. You'd pull it down and put it to the target server. Now, when you use the Ansible Tower, it will deploy from Artifactory to all the servers, all the binaries that are necessary for this particular deployment. And the playbook is what you use to pull the binaries down from Artifactory to the target host. So this is the state of everything. So the main piece, the project ties in from Tower to Bitbucket, but the job template is what the continuous integration tool uses to initiate the job. So the documentation for Ansible is in these particular locations. So these 5 here are all internal. I think, no, this one's not internal. No, sorry, these are external, sorry. The first 5 are external. If you want to get information about Ansible, the first 5 on here is the videos, reference, source, public community, and sharing. These are all external sites, and then these are all internal sites. And anyone can get access to them to get more familiar with Ansible and the other DevOps tools that we're using. And these I can send out to you guys so you can go and take a look at them on your own. So what is Ansible? Ansible itself it's a command line based tool for configuring and managing computers. It does multi-node software deployment. You can do ad hoc task execution. So if I just want to run a ping against a server, there is a module, and we'll get into modules later, that you can run to test the connection between the Ansible host and the host, the target host that you want to connect to. There's also configuration management, so you can do, if you have templates that you need modified, the Ansible is very good at doing configuration management also. And there's a module for that to be able to do this. So different features of Ansible. The automation scripts are written as playbooks using YAML. YAML is a very simple language to learn. It uses modules that are written in Python or PowerShell to perform tasks on the target host. What it will do with the modules, from my experience using it on a Windows machine, it takes a module will be transferred over to the Windows server under the user ID, localhost, the application directory. It's ran onto there, and once it's finished doing its task, it will delete the task. So it doesn't leave anything on the target server. The other thing to know about this, it's agentless, so you don't need to install agents on other machines in order to connect to them. It does agentless connection to Linux machines using SSH, and on the Windows machine, it uses WinRM. It incorporates the Jinja 2 templating language to do configuration management. So what Power is built on top of Ansible core itself. So where Ansible core is a command line interface, Power gives you a GUI interface to use. It's you get real-time playbook output and exploration. You could do push button automation, so you could go into the job template and you can just run the job directly from the job template. And that in that case, it's not automated. It's automated, but you're doing the deployment. You click the button to start the deployment. It's got role-based access control and auditing, and you can do remote command execution. And playbooks are run as jobs based on the job template. So in order for your playbook to be run, you tie in, again, we go back to the previous screens where I showed you where the project screen was. The project ties into Bitbucket, and it knows where your playbook is. So when you set up a job template, you reference the playbook, and once you hit the start button in the job template, you will kick off your job to do whatever you need to do on the target host. Concepts and development in Ansible. So this is an overview of Ansible. The main component in Ansible Power is the organization. The organization is the logical group of related projects. Each project will represent the Ansible playbook and the artifacts that are going to be used for specific application deployment. So this is the organization, and within each organization, you have the project. The project, like I said, it represents the playbooks and artifacts to be used. The playbook, which is it's used by the deploy.yaml playbook. That's the default playbook that we use. Variables, they're used to control the playbook execution by environment. So in one environment, you could have something specifically done, but the variable determine what you're doing per environment. Sorry? Sorry, was that a question? The playbook is the main deployment script. So you don't do anything without a playbook. Variables are, you put the variables inside your playbooks, and each variable, you use the variables within plays. So a play is a set of related tasks within a playbook targeting the different hosts.
Hello, Paul, Mayank here. Sorry,
go ahead.
Here my question is since you're saying the playbook, it's like a main deployment, right? Which will have all the details about the deployment. So my question here is, when you receive it from a developer to be put it in QA, and we are doing that type of deployment, so at that time, what will be the kind of sign-off? Because who will be verifying that the playbook and the execution steps mentioned in the playbook will be going correctly?
Okay. I'll be able to show you a playbook when we go down. Just hold on to your question, because when I say you receive a playbook, it's not like how we used to receive the bill guide. The playbook is not actually something that's physically given to you. The playbook is written by the developer. It's uploaded to Bitbucket, so you never even get to touch the playbook, essentially.
Okay, understood.
Right?
Thank you.
They upload it to Bitbucket. When you set up the project will tie into the location on Bitbucket where that playbook is located. In the job template, you point to the specific playbook, but it's not something that's sent to you. The playbook will consist of other playbooks. It consists of scripts. So it's not something tangible that you're really going to hold on to. But I'll show you what the playbook looks like, and then you'll get a better understanding of it.
Thank you.
Okay? Yeah. But just please remember your question for after.
Yes.
All right. The template is a dynamically built configuration file. And, that's also in a playbook. Modules, they're called by task to run code on target servers. And modules are just, they're written, again, in Python or PowerShell. And they're transferred over to the target server to do something specific. The inventory is a list of all the target hosts for an environment which will be stored in and managed in Ansible Tower. So essentially, with the way everything is right now, it's more of a hands-off thing. You're not really having to touch any servers at all. You don't log into the servers. Ansible itself, because of the way it runs, you never have to touch the servers. Once the playbook starts to run, it goes out and it will know which host, based on the inventory, it knows which host to go to. And the group itself, it's a large group of target servers with similar functions. So for instance, I can say I just want to target this environment, and I want to target the web servers in this environment. I can even go more granular. I can say I want to target specific web servers within this environment itself. And handlers are just callable tasks which are used to restart services, etc. So get into playbooks now. So a playbook is a script file that initiates the deployment. It's written in the YAML language, so it's not even something that you have to do. The developers will have written it, and it's tested out in dev. So once they have it working in dev, then it moves up to QA. Once it works, we know that it does what, the deployment does what we needed it to do. Then it's signed off and it moves up to production. It follows strict indentation format, YAML language. It's very easy to read, so you can tell what's happening in each step. A playbook contains one or more plays, and it can be used to call other playbooks. play, as you can say, so a playbook contains one or more plays, and a play involves tasks to run code from target host. They usually represent the application component as part of an overall deployment. Now, when you have complex playbooks, like you have large playbooks, they can be broken up into separate playbooks and called by one main playbook. So the default playbook is always deploy.yaml, but deploy.yaml can call other playbooks also. So here's a sample playbook. So it starts with the dash dash dash. And since you name your play, and then you have to give the host that you want to target. In this case, it's the app server. So this is the target group that's in the inventory. So in inventories in Power, there's a set of servers that are going to be under the app servers group. You may have other servers that are under the web servers, other servers under database servers, etc. In this case, we're also doing gather facts false. If it's set to true, what it does, it gathers all the information about the particular host that you're targeting. That can take a very long time. So generally, this is set to false. Become true. If you want to run your play as under another ID, then you set become to be true. Sorry, and here's your task. So in this task, we're going to do include start underscore email.yaml. So here it's calling a separate YAML playbook. And in order to call the other playbook, we do an include. And then, so it runs these sequentially, but it can run it against multiple servers at the same time. So everything that would be under the app servers, that it will be running this against all the servers at the same time. So in this case, what this one is doing is creating a target directory. So this is a module. So first you name what you're doing. This is a module file. Here's the path that we want to create it. We want to create, this is telling it to create it as a directory. The mode 755 is this is the right that we want to assign to it. The next step that we wanted to do, we want to unzip deployment files to the target host. So we run this module, which is to unarchive. So this is, it isn't here in particular, but what this would be saying is that there should be one that says we're pulling down this specific file from the artifact. So this would be something that would be pulled down from artifact, and we want to unarchive it. So this is the module, the source, and here's the destination we want to put it into. And here's the next the next play that we want to run. We want to run the install script. This is the module, and here's the script we want to run. So there is no need for human intervention to do this. The playbook knows that this is what we want done, and this will be done on all the target hosts at the same time. So common YAML errors that we have, if the hash value contains a colon, then use double quotes or you'll get an error. So the colon, if you notice in the playbook, the name, module, whatever you're using, we always use a colon. So if you're using colon in the playbook or in your play, it has to have double brackets, double quotes, my apologies. Ansible uses, this is how variables are passed. And if you specify one after a colon beginning, which is the beginning of a line, so after the colon, you have to enclose it in double quotes. So this would be a variable that's being passed in. And variables can be passed in from the inventory or your job template, or they can even come from Bamboo itself. But we'll get into that later. So we'll take a look at modules right now. So what modules are, they're just bits of code copied to a target host for execution. There's default modules that come with Ansible Tower. There's also modules that you can write yourself. There's modules that we can download from the internet, but those you not, you use them at your own risk. Okay. They're executed to satisfy a task declaration. Modules they act as arguments to control execution. So this is a module file, and these are the arguments that we're using. So in this one, the path, the owner, the group, the state, we want to create a directory, and we want to have it recursive. And custom modules can be created in any language. The basic ones are just created, like I said before, in Python or PowerShell for Windows. And these are the available groups of modules. Cloud, clustering. You have modules that essentially cover everything that we want to do. So if you went to Ansible's documentation site and click on Cloud or Files, for instance, you'll see these modules under Files. These are the most commonly used modules. They have one that's specifically for Windows. So when you click on here, you'll see all the modules that are specific to Windows itself. And there are extra modules that are on GitHub. Okay. I want to look at inventories now. So inventories are set up in Ansible Tower. The plays that are in playbooks, they are executed against an inventory of hosts. In Ansible Tower, the inventories are created for each target environment that we're targeting. So, for instance, there's one CIPG underscore LS9. You can get CIPG underscore dev1, dev2, and so on. Each host in the inventory, they have to use a fully qualified domain name. They have to. And hosts are placed into logical groups. So what you do, you create the inventory under the environment, and then under each environment, you're going to create logical groups. And in the logical groups, then you're placing your target servers or your hosts. Now you can have hosts that are in different groups. So you can have, for instance, app one server that's under a web server, for instance, and an app server. Any combination you want, you can put them on. So the group will reference specific application components such as the database, web, application servers, and they're consistent across all the inventories for the application. So you'll have it in development, you'll have it in QA, you'll have it in prod, and essentially you have it in jar also, another kind of prod. So this is what the inventory groups will look like. You have Apache servers, so host 1, host 2 are Apache servers. You have the database servers here, which DB host 1, DB host 2. You have the app servers here, which is the app host 1, host 2. The JBoss servers would be web host 3 and host 4, but you can just specify web servers as it. Now, when you would use these, for instance, if I go back up to the playbook that we had before, so here, the host, you're targeting the app servers, it would be these, and it would target these specific servers. So whatever is put in the playbook, that's the servers that will be targeted. And you can even turn off one server, not turn off as in physically turn off the server, but in the inventory group, you can turn off one server so it's not being impacted and just apply to one host if there's a situation where that's called for. So here's the deploy.yaml playbook. And again, this is written by the development team. You never have to write it as the QA individual should not have to be writing the deploy.yaml, and neither should those in prod. This is coming directly from the development team. So there's a play, and we just want to target the database server. So what this would do, it would just target these servers. And this is all in one deploy.yaml. So you could target database servers here, and then I'm going to, in this play down here, I'm going to target the web servers down here. And this is the dev environment. And then over in the QA environment, it would use the same servers. Because you see it's referencing the group, not the server name itself. So because it's referencing the group in Tower, when you do the inventory, you set up your groups, they're set up very similar in dev, QA, and prod. So we have consistency across. Tower. So Ansible Tower is the enterprise level user interface for Ansible. Ansible Core itself, as I said, it's a command line base, but it's lacking some features which Tower is looking after. So for instance, in Tower we have LDAP integration, user authentication. So when you log into Ansible Tower, you're using your Office ID and password. It's got role-based access capabilities, so you can determine who gets access to which, to what in Tower. So we can turn off and say, you only have access to view this organization, and in this organization, you only have access to view the project and the inventory, and maybe to look at the job output. The playbooks are run as jobs in Tower.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It has audit tracking. So, you know, for security purposes, that's necessary. It has easy access to run logs, so you can go and if something fails, you can go and take a look at the logs and say, okay, this is where it failed, this is what happened, etc. It has zero manual deployment capability. and it integrates with Bitbucket to access playbooks. These are all this that we're lacking from Ansible command line help. So in Tower is built up of these components. Organization, which is the logical grouping of projects or applications. So you will have, for instance, channel services, EBS, etc. You have your project, which is the application to deploy. It's the link. The project is the link to Bitbucket. So now we have different terminology for projects. So typically when we heard projects, that was, there's a project that we needed to work on. But in Ansible Tower, a project is itself a link to the Bitbucket repo. In teams in Ansible Tower, so everyone will be put in an organization, but you can be put in specific teams in the organization, which will give you specific permissions or roles, which is important because you don't want everyone being able to see everything. You'll only see what you are allowed to access and control. The inventory is where the target hosts are located, and these must be defined in Tower. And again, the inventory when you're putting in the inventory, the hosts have to be used their fully qualified domain name. The job template is the settings for running playbook. You have credentials that are set up in Tower, and these are secured connection credentials. So in most cases, you're going to be using service accounts to run these jobs. A job is a running instance of a job template. So once you trigger a job template, you will see it when we go into Tower. I'll show you how it's set up. But once you trigger a job template, what you will see is a job will pop up, and you will see this running job, and which is the result of the job template that you triggered. And the API is the REST API for managing Tower. It's what the continuous integration tool, in this case Bamboo, uses to trigger the deployment. So you've seen this before, but again, the developer, he's going to do a Git push. So you have the Bitbucket repo. Now, if I go back up here again, the organization, which is the logical grouping of projects. So let's say this is an organization here. In this organization, you have your project, your inventory, the job template, your credentials, your job. The only thing you don't have is the team, but the team is in here because the team will determine who can access the job template. The job template is what triggers the automation. And what the job template does, it pulls the information from the project, the inventory, uses the credentials, because without the proper credentials, you can't access the target host. And the variables that come with this, the inventory, so you know what you're doing on what host. The continuous integration tool uses the API to connect to the job template, and this will trigger the automation. You can either trigger it yourself, manual triggering, or this will automatically trigger the job template. And each job template produces a job. when the job is ran, they are the factory. You get the binary, go with the job, and it's deployed to each target host environment. And it's the playbook task that is going to pull the binaries down from Artifactory to the target host. It's 10 o'clock right now. I'm going to just take a short break for about 15 minutes.
Hello? Okay.
Okay, so it's 10 right now, so we come back at 10:50.
Okay. Okay.
क्या है ये घर से बैठे रहते हो क्या नहीं करूँगी कुछ नहीं करूँगी मम्मा जिससे पानी नहीं तो अच्छा पानी क्यों पानी जिससे निकालो चलो Mama panas. Panas. Dışarı.
फोन आया मम्मा को फोन आया
दिशा बता मेरा एक फोन आएगी मम्मा ये इधर घूमती रहती है मैं जाके टीचर से बात कर रही हूँ अरे बहुत बोलती है मुझे बोलती है ले मुझे बोलती क्यों नहीं दिमाग खराब हो गया बोलेगी सुसु What is your name? What is your name? बता दो अभी नहीं बोल रही थी बोलेगी good to दिशा बोली नहीं करती घर पे सपना करती अरे रिजर्वेशन देखो ना मेरा सब जनवरी फरवरी का देखो फरवरी में मार्च तो मार्च में है क्या हाँ कि 4 फरवरी के बाद देखो और मेरा करा तो हम अकेले आ जाएंगे 1-2 दिन के लिए हाँ देख लो फ्लाइट का भी कितना भी लगेगा हाँ हाँ देखो नहीं बता रहा खाली अभी करना पापा वृंदावन घूमने जाएंगे मंदिर तो आएंगे हैं बलराम ऐसे कैसे चलेगा समझ में नहीं आ रहा पहले गए ऐसे कैसे मम्मी को छोड़ के चले जाते हैं मम्मी फिर मंडे को ही आएंगे कब आएंगे? हाँ तो मंडे को ही आए। अच्छा सैटरडे संडे, हाँ सैटरडे संडे रहा घर तो सोचो घूम आए। चलो ठीक है, वैसे भी जाते कहाँ घूम आएंगे, थोड़ा तो दिमाग ही सही रहता है। गौरव तो सुबह पेटीएम का पूछ रहे थे, पेटीएम का कैसे करते, पेटीएम से पे करना था तो गौरव से पूछ रहे थे कि बात करते। हाँ कैश तो क्या ब्लाउज बनवाए थे तो मेरे को तो 2000 कुछ रुपये देने थे तो नहीं उसके पास कुछ था ही नहीं, तो मुझे जब हमारे पास पेटीएम है तो बोलती है हाँ पेटीएम है, तो फिर तो हमने कभी यूज़ तो किया नहीं था, तो गौरव पूछे तो गौरव स्क्रीन शॉट देख के बता रहा था ऐसे करो, फिर उसके बाद 10 रुपये डाल के देखिए तो समझ में आ गया। हाँ हो गया। हाँ पेटीएम तो है, हाँ डाउनलोड मोबाइल में तो है, वही कार्ड की मशीन नहीं रहती है ना। नहीं यार अभी खाना बनाया है, सब सो रहे हैं हमारे घर में, जो मेरी हम थोड़ा जल्दी आ जाते हैं तो सब सन्नाटा मार जाते हैं। अरे आज ही जल्दी आए थे। नहीं अरे यार कल तो बहुत लेट हो गया था, 9 बजे आए थे, बट ऑफिस में काम रहता है थोड़ा, अभी आज तो जल्दी आ गए थे, 4 बजे आ गए थे। हाँ सब हाँ नहीं वो उसके साथ में मेरे फ्री दूसरे लोग जो थोड़ा हेल्प करवाते हैं तो उठेंगे खाना खाने के टाइम 11 बजे खाना ढूंढेंगे कुछ है क्या मुझे नहीं लेकर इधर आके बंद करके सोच रहे थे कि कुछ करना ना पड़े वही तो इतना दिक्कत नहीं रहता, लोग ज़्यादा है ना। हाँ उसका वो एक पूरा हो गया, वो जो था पहले वाला, अभी इसका तो है ठीक ही है, खबर नहीं जो किराया बचा ना उसमें। हाँ मुझे तो 14,000 देते हैं, 14,000 देते हैं। हाँ तो भी अच्छा 55 का था। अरे यहाँ बहुत महंगी है, हाँ बहुत महंगी है, ठीक है वेजिटेरियन खास नहीं है। थोड़ा सा दूर है ऑफिस, तो अभी भी मेरा यहाँ घर से दूर का था, क्योंकि मेरा ऑफिस एकदम शहर से दूर है ना। गाँव में, क्योंकि गाँव में कंपनी वहाँ पे और दूर हो जाएगा, देखो चेंज कर लेंगे ना, यहाँ पे पास में है ना काफ़ी सारे पास, ये बहुत टाइम है 2021 हाँ चलो तुमने खा लिया
आलू का चलो
अच्छा बनाते क्या बनाते कैसा बनाते हैं अच्छा बेटा तो सीख लो तुम, मगर साला डेली मंदी तो नहीं होता बनाने का। कुछ लोग रख लिया करो तो खा लिया करो जब ना आए तो तुम बना तो सर पैसे ना दिया करो ना उसको।
How they're supposed to be set up. So, for instance, we have channel services _NBC_developers. Permissions. And this is used to our team. This is how you set up your inventory.
खाना टेस्टी नहीं बनाती तो बोला करो नमक डालो मिर्ची डालो थोड़ा मसाला
I've got short names.
ले जाए इनको बनाती बहुत टेस्टी
Environment.
मुझे करता है इलाहाबाद टेस्टी बनाई
इसके पापा बोल रहे हैं, इसके पापा बोल रहे हैं इसके लिए जब खाना टेस्टी बनाती है, खुद को तो भाग के सोचना तक तो आता नहीं है, यहाँ बता रहे हैं।
सोचा ही नहीं
ज़्यादा ना खाकर बाहर का नुकसान खराब तेल रहता है ना, खराब तेल रहता है, टेस्टी तो लगता है थोड़े टाइम के लिए, इससे अच्छा है ग्लूकोज ग्लूकोज पे रखा करो साथ में।
And this is when you want to onboard a
दाल
new
रोटी बना के
project
खा लिया
or
करो,
application.
उनको तो आता ही है ना, दाल रोटी बना के खा लिया करो।
So this site has the standard for developers.
हाँ तहरी है, तहरी बना के खा लेंगे। ताकि जाएगी हमको भी खाने दे दिया करो, यहाँ तो साला बना के खाओ।
Does anyone have any questions? We're going to do a short demo of Ansible Tower. But does anyone have any questions?
आज तो नहीं, थोड़ा सा दूर है, मगर वही है ऑफिस मन नहीं होता है खाने का, घर में थोड़ा बहुत खा ले।
Here's the tower. Then you log in with your ID and password. Projects, inventory, job template, jobs. Organizations are set up like this. So my ID only has right to see these for organizations. That's why I only see these. And you may only see one or two. It depends on which org that you are admitted to. You can set up the credentials. And again, it depends on what you are assigned to be. The org admins, they're the ones who set up the team. They determine who is a member of what team. Now, for a project, this is one that I'll be working with. This is how a project is set up. So first we get the organization created. Then they have to set up the project. In this case, the project is in Bitbucket. So this is the location in Bitbucket where this project is grabbed the information from. So this is where all the source code is located in Bitbucket itself. And this would be the credentials that they would use. And they're using the SCM branch in Bitbucket development. The SCM type is it. And they set it to update on launch. So what that means is every time that the job template is launched, it's checked to see if there's an update on the playbook. And they go from there.
Hello, and welcome to the meeting. Please enter your passcode followed by the pound or hash. Please hold while I confirm your passcode. Thank you for joining Global Meet. When you hear the tone, you will be the 12th person to join the meeting.
Turned off, it's just that in power, it's just disabled so that we can say we want to go to just these two servers. So in this environment, you have 4 different groups. And on this group, the dev test group, you just go towards these 2 servers. So in your playbook, you'd be targeting dev test. And in dev test, we're just these fully qualified domain names. I just go back up to one thing. I said for the Windows machines, you have to have, if it's Windows machine, you have WinRM, Ansible _connection /space WinRM, Ansible _port port 595. That's where you put it, so it knows how to connect to Windows itself. So that's how they set up the inventory. The job template is where the job is ran. So when I think you can manually come in here, and I can just click on this button to kick off this deployment, this will start the job right away. He's got to set up in Bitbucket that he can trigger his deployment from, not Bitbucket, from Bamboo directly. If you trigger from Bamboo directly, it will pick up this job template and it will run it against the host that he's specifying. So if I want to run this manually, I just click on this. And start. So first thing it's doing, doing an SVM update. And what that's doing is the project is going over to Bitbucket, pulling up the source code. Here shown the SVM update, which is successful. Now it's running the playbook. So first 2 plays, so first thing it did, it sent out started email notification. Second play is deploying the app component. And these are the specific tasks that it's doing. And you can see these are the hosts that it's going against. So here are all the tabs that are on their display, which is to deploy the app component. So if you're in the config directory, you can copy the shell script. And you've got the application package from Artifactory. You copy the WAR file to the server. You copy the configuration from rollback. And now it's copying the JVM.options file. So this is doing configuration management. It's updating a template file. And again, like I said, it's doing both servers at the same time. Green means that it was successful. The orange means that it it's made some changes. If it's red, it meant to fail. Here's the status. Green is okay, orange is changed, unreachable, and failed. Back reply, successful. So, first thing it sent out, start email notification. These are the two tabs that were involved in that play. And the deploying the app component, these were the tabs that were part of this play. And if you want to see the logs, I go here, click on jobs, and you go to here. And this is the output of the job that was just ran. Everything that was done. And if you notice, so playbook, here's a play, here's a task. You name your task, tells you can go to each task to see. So here's the other play, deploying the app component. Here's a task. Here's another task. Here's another one. Another one. So the tasks are a great way to find out what fails. You can go to the specific task itself and see where it failed. And as you can see, there's a lot of information in this one. And essentially, that's what you would do once the job is finished. You can click here. So I went to jobs, but once the job is finished, you can actually just click here, and it would give you the same thing that I'm looking at by clicking on jobs. It gives you everything.
क्या बनाए? ज़्यादा नहीं खाना।
पहले बताना चाहिए था।
कोशिश की है, मालूम था तो पर
नहीं खाना है।
ज़्यादा नहीं खाना।
Does anyone have any questions? I may have gone through that very quickly.
एक बार ले आ सकते हैं, ठीक है?
If you have any questions about tower,
नहीं खाना तो मेरा
now's the time to ask them.
अभी क्यों नहीं आई? ठंडा जाए।
Components to Ansible tower.
सिस्टम आज गर्म होता है। और की अंदर नहीं।
Okay, there's no more questions. No? No one has any questions?
No question.
Okay. For the link that I had in presentation, I send it to that team to take a look at those links.
Okay.
Is there anyone in particular?
Send it to Deepak.
Sorry, to who?
To Deepak. how it's going to be.
Okay, not a problem then. All right. Well, if no one has any other questions, you can all have a good evening. I think I went through it very quickly. Shoot, that's about an hour and a half. All right. You're welcome. Thank you very much, everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.